Hey, good morning, everybody. I just realized something. Sorry. Throat's a little dry, a little parched right now. A little sparkling water here. A Waterloo strawberry, not a sponsor. I don't even know why I say that, man. I'm a microcosmic, just tiny itty bitty speck on the internet. I ain't shit. But going back to what I was saying, I just realized that yesterday was the lone angler's birthday. Yeah, man. So I guess happy birthday to the lone angler. And thank you for all of the downloads and the follows and all that kind of stuff. I'm fast approaching 50,000 downloads for 189 episodes or 188 episodes. I don't think that's too bad. I'm just having fun, you know? I like talking. I like talking about fishing and other weird shit, which I realized that I haven't done a Unhooked in a long time, so I might have to piece something together. Maybe call a weirdo old buddy of mine or something somewhere along the line, and maybe we'll lay something down on the old SD card. I think that'd be kind of fun. I'm kind of due. I got to thinking, it was Saturday, I think it was. Got to thinking about, the universe and space and how things are expanding, and, this little rock that we're floating on, is that just part of the explosion? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. We won't get into it now. But anyway, this episode here, I had the pleasure of having Mr. Kamden Glade stop by in the studio. Yes, he lives right here in Bemidji, and he's working with the Department of Natural Resources via BSU, working on his master's degree. He's got a cool hashtag out there on the Instagram called #FishPuke. And if you're wondering what that's all about, you might want to listen to this episode. And then when you're done, go find Kamden Glade on Instagram and check it out if you're really a science, biology, fish nerd kind of dude. They're doing stomach samples of muskies, largemouth bass, walleyes, and northern pike around here in the Bemidji area. It was fascinating. I love talking biology and fisheries biology with these guys when I can get a hold of them. It's fantastic. I learn a few things, and I like to throw my little weird theories out there. But huge thank you to Panfish Pursuers P3 Plastics for helping out the lone angler since, I don't know, a long time. I really appreciate you boys, and I appreciate the dedication and the time it went into designing your microplastics for ice fishing, and I use them a lot for open water too, but they got some of the best shapes, best profiles out there, simple yet refined, and also simulating what panfish eat, just a little bit bigger. The reason they're a little bit bigger is because machining capabilities, the smaller you go, the more expensive it gets, and the harder it gets too. And you're also working with the limitations of plastisol or PVC, polyvinyl chloride. Nerd alert. Anyway, thank you to Panfish Pursuers for supporting the lone angler. If you head on over to p-3plastics.com and check out their offerings, I would suggest you get your order in soon. I have a little discount code courtesy of those guys, from them to me to you, passing it along. Some savings. Ice is coming. Get your order in now. Be patient. If you get it in now, you'll have it by ice, no problem. But just be patient. There are 3 dudes. They got families. They got full-time jobs, and they grind it out on the weekends. So get your order in now. Start out with the Lone Angler Pro Pack. Crafty's got a Pro Pack too. I think even SmackDown Outdoors has a Pro Pack. I'm not 100% sure, but I bet you he does. But the Pro Packs are a good way to start, and you get 15% off of those too. So definitely go check those out. Also, hey, as you're coming up here to do a little grouse hunting, duck hunting, getting ready for archery season and deer season and all that stuff, and getting in this fall fishing that Bemidji's got to offer, make sure you stop in at Ridgetop Outdoors, right on 71 South, right where 71 and Highway 2 meet, right there by the overpass. Justin's going to have everything you're looking for and more. So definitely stop in there. Tell them the Lone Angler sent you. Have a cup of coffee, get the lowdown on the area, and then proceed on to your adventure. All right, speaking of adventure, hang tight. Check this one out. Pretty cool stuff. I will talk to you later. I'm going to celebrate the Lone Angler birthday with chugging down this sparkling water. And that's what 48 years old is like. Bye now. Hey, all right. Welcome, Kamden Glade, BSU, correct?
That's correct.
Well, why don't you go ahead and give our listeners just a little bit of your background and who you are and where you're from and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. I grew up in northwest Iowa, kind of farm country down there. Growing up, my family took family vacations up to the Park Rapids area for a full week every summer. We did that for close to 20 years while I was growing up, from the time I was in elementary school all the way through college.
Okay.
Did a lot of fishing up there. That's kind of where I got into some of the more game fishing, I suppose we could say. I did grow up fishing for like bluegills and bullheads off my grandpa's dock prior to that, but got into some bass fishing there and then some pike fishing too, so trying to target some more fish.
Pike fishing?
Yeah.
That's something you just don't hear of people targeting anymore.
Yeah, growing up in Iowa, it was cool to come up here up north and catch something with teeth. And so the lake we were on didn't have muskies and had walleye, but we were up there typically mid to late July, so it was warm and the fish were out deep, and we hadn't figured out how to use our electronics yet, so we just kind of beat the lily pad line with spinner baits and swim jigs and caught either bass or pike, whatever was willing to play that day. So
you can't go wrong with that technique. I still deploy it. Sometimes I get tired of fishing bluegills and stuff, and it's like, hey, Crafty, let's just go chuck spinner baits.
Yeah,
that's all I want. What a magical bait. It'll literally catch anything. I've caught walleyes on them.
Oh, yeah.
Crappies, bass. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah. Recently, especially just this past summer, I kind of got back into throwing the real little spinner baits, almost like a beetle spin type thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Just fishing weed lines with those, and I've caught, same thing, everything from little bluegills and perch all the way up to the occasional walleye and pike that's hanging out in the weeds. So
yeah,
it's tough to argue with the success that they have.
Yeah, for sure. So you had a cabin in Park Rapids, or you've mingled around the Park Rapids area. Is that what drew you up here to go to BSU? Or did you attend BSU, or are you just working for BSU?
So I did attend BSU for my graduate degree. So I got my master's at BSU, but I did not go there for my bachelor's degree.
Oh, where'd you go for your bachelor's?
I went to a small school in Iowa, Wartburg College.
Okay.
It's a Lutheran school in kind of north central Iowa. Initially coming out of high school, I was pretty good in high school and liked science. So, any bright-eyed 18-year-old will say, well, why don't I just go to pre-med for college and become a doctor so I can make lots of money and do stuff with that? But I got about a third of the way through that degree, and I realized I enjoyed being outside way too much to sit in a doctor's office all day and to go to school for that long, which is a little ironic considering how long I ended up going to school anyways. But
right. But the right there, just in that statement, the power of the outdoors.
Oh yeah.
Here's a guy that's like, I'm gonna be a doctor. Man, I like fishing.
Yeah.
Man, I like fishing. That says a lot. So you got your master's down in Iowa, and then you got your bachelor's. What your degree is in? What?
Bachelor's degree was in biology.
Okay.
So just kind of a general biology course. The school I was at didn't offer like a fisheries specific degree, so I took some of the conservation courses and the one aquatic biology course that they offered, and just kind of had my general degree in biology. Did a couple summer internships with the Iowa DNR down there.
Okay.
And then after I graduated, ended up going and moving out to Nevada and worked at a trout hatchery out there for a little over a year.
Okay.
So
yeah, I saw that on your link there.
Yeah.
That's in your Instagram bio. I cruised on over there, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Nevada. What the majority of their management is trout, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
They do have a few larger reservoirs that they manage for different kind of warm water species. Either I think they've got like some hybrid striped bass, and some of them they've got largemouth in a few, and
oh yeah,
so some of that kind of stuff too. But the majority of what they're doing is trout out there.
Yeah, and I've been taking this new journey into fly fishing, and it's really hard to find fly fishing that, I shouldn't say it's really hard, but most of it on YouTube and stuff is trout.
Right.
You get over into Europe and it's, it's perch, those redfin perch, pike, a little bit of fly rod, zander fishing,
Okay.
that type of stuff. And then if you go and you look on YouTube, for bluegills and stuff, it's kind of just, I don't know. Well, at the same time, fly fishing for bluegill isn't super technical anyway.
Right.
But it's just different,
Yep.
I'm going trout fishing on Sunday.
Okay.
I'm going to go up to the Red Lake Reservation.
Yep.
I have a good buddy that's a tribal member, and I've fished up there on several of those lakes over the years, and it's quite interesting. It's really good.
Okay.
It's fun. But I've never caught like a rainbow or a brook trout out of the flow tube. So we're going to do half day rainbow, or half a day of trout, and then half day hunting big bluegills up there. So that should be pretty fun. But when you were out in Nevada, did you get into the trout fishing at all, or were you too busy with your academics and interning? And
no, so I was actually between school at that point.
So you had some time.
I did. I had some time. I did never get into the fly fishing at all, but I did get into the trout just because that was kind of all we had. We had kind of a drainage system that did have some largemouth bass in it, but they kind of topped out at 14, 15 inches.
Okay.
So fun to catch, but the trout that we had were substantially larger than that in that same system. So I did tangle with a few of those, and a lot of it was, small spinners, small crankbaits, and then I even ended up fishing like some different bass plastics, like Texas rigged Senkos, or put a drop shot with a little power worm on and fish some current areas, and I actually caught quite a few larger trout doing that kind of thing too.
Oh, for sure. I in watching a lot of this fly fishing stuff, trout aren't necessarily the nymph and larvae grasshop eaters that you think. Now, most of your smaller ones are, but man, it was quite a few years ago now that I think about it. Uncut Angling up in Canada, they put out an episode. They were catching huge brook trout on mice.
Yeah.
Flies that are made like mice. Some of these, as I'm taking my journey through fly tying, a lot of these streamers, you would think were for bass, but they're not. They're for trout, and trout are a pretty, when they get to size, they're a pretty formidable predator.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I just watched an episode last night of Wildfly Productions on YouTube, which is really cool if you've never seen it. Even if you're not into fly fishing, just the cinematography is wonderful and their storytelling is great.
Okay.
But they were up in Appalachian Mountains, and they caught this decent brown trout, and it had a rainbow.
Right.
The tail was sticking out of its mouth. And that kind of reminded me that, trout of size are pretty big predators.
Oh yeah.
So you're in Nevada, working there. Was it, hey, I want to get back to the northern part of the Midwest? Is that what brought you back into BSU? Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, it was a combination of a lot of things, and probably dumb luck is at the top of the list. So while I was doing my undergrad, I had the opportunity to go to a fisheries conference, kind of a meeting of like state biologists. They go and they present the research that they're working on. There's also a lot of college students, both undergrads and grad students, that do that kind of thing as well. So I got to go to one of those, and that was, I think it was 2016, so that was right around the time that the most recent pushback on muskie stocking in Minnesota was kind of at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was some talk on that kind of thing, and then I think the meeting was actually in Michigan, so there was a little bit of a dedicated time slot for some muskie management presentations as well. And I still have the notebook page saved in a drawer somewhere. I actually kind of drafted a research project outline at that conference that was kind of dedicated towards looking at what muskies eat and kind of trying to debunk the myth that muskies are eating all the walleyes.
Yes, I remember those years.
Yeah.
I kind of just sat back on the sidelines and was like, if you could live for a year underwater, you would see that it doesn't matter what's on the menu. If
Right.
you're hungry, you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
If it comes by, it's a pretty, for lack of a better term, it's a pretty dark world.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty vicious.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
And we'll get into your Instagram here in a little bit because it's fascinating. I kind of chuckled because I was looking for some trout supplies the other day for tie-in for this winter. I'm kind of want to bulk up my supply list, and they actually they look like mini turkey basters for when you catch these trout. You can do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pump, flush their stomachs out, and the super trout nerds can then filter through the puke to see what they're eating.
Right.
Which I guess is, and I as a fisherman, just being curious as I'm cleaning fish, I've always just
Oh yeah.
cut the guts or cut that stomach open and take a look.
Yep.
Because you never know what you're going to find in there.
Oh yeah. It can be really interesting, and like going back to when we were vacationing to Park Rapids, being from Iowa, I will admit that we ate some of the bass that we caught when we were up
Nothing
there.
wrong with that, man.
No, they're
good.
They are good. They're a lot better in colder water than they are in warmer water.
Bingo.
I will say that. But when you eat fish once a year, really, and I mean, they taste about like a bluegill. But we would actually get to the point where we'd be cutting the stomachs open, and we'd be like, okay, this one we caught over in this corner of the lake, and it had a crayfish in its belly. And these couple we caught over on this side of the lake, and they had bluegills in their belly. So then we kind of got to the point where it was like, okay, we're fishing over here. That one had a crayfish, so let's tie on a jig with a crayfish trailer on it.
Yep.
And kind of shifting gears over to more of like a bluegill swim bait looking type thing on the other side of the lake. So that's where I got the start of kind of the same thing you're talking about, just that general curiosity of what these fish are doing down under the water.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. The whole stigma of eating bass. I mean, yes, bass they're super fun to catch. They make a lot of people a lot of money. But they're one of my favorite. Like, if I go ice fishing, it's one of the first fish I want to keep. And I have a conservation license, so I can only legally keep 3.
Right.
And I never keep 3. I just keep 1. That 14 to 16 inch range.
Yep.
And you're 100% correct. Through the ice, it is one of the it's so hardy, and you get so much meat.
Yep.
It's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a member of the panfish family.
Right.
Or so they say.
Yep. Well, from the work I've been doing the last 4 years, I'll tell you they eat a lot more similarly to bluegills than to pike and walleye in a lot of lakes.
I can believe that because some of my biggest largemouth that I've ever caught have been through the ice on little tiny, tungsten jigs and a microplastic.
Yeah.
Which kind of, I've always wondered this. I'm just going to get into it right now because I have a lot of time over the years. I've thought about a lot of things of where I caught fish, where I've caught big fish. And I've been starting to, over the years, and people that are regular listeners have heard me talk about this before, but I have this theory on trophy-size fish. Now, I'm a bigger dude. I'm a little smaller than I used to be. I just signed up for the gym for another year today.
Nice.
So I'll probably go work out tonight. But anyway, I'm a bigger dude, and I still like to be in the shade, cool, comfortable, and then close to my food source.
Right.
If you notice my couch, right behind the couch is the refrigerator, correct?
Absolutely.
I don't have many options. Up here it's a cool apartment, but I don't have many options. But even outside of the apartment, I can remember, if I'm sitting by a bonfire, I'm going to drag the cooler right by me.
Yep.
I'm close to my source.
Yes.
That I want to be at. So I'm trying to, over the years, I've been trying to relate like big trophy fish behavior to human behavior. Again, I like it calm, shade, cool, close to my food source, not a lot of activity, pretty chill. I call that the playground effect. If you're looking for let's just say bluegills, because I know a lot about them. If you're looking for the magnums, the 10.5 plus inchers, you're not going to find them in the school of 6 and 8 inchers. I think they're lone wolves. I think they've found a place where they can sustain their mass. There's not a whole lot of activity or quote unquote competition for that food. And it's colder water. It's a little bit deeper, a little bit out of the ordinary. Am I onto something there?
You could be. I will say through the last 3+ years that we've been doing this, fish continue to do things that make me scratch my head over and over again. So you think you got them figured out, and then they do something completely off the wall.
Yeah, and that's the allure of fishing.
Yep.
You know, you're on them one day, and the next day you're like, let's go get them again. And they're like nowhere to be found.
Yeah. Yeah. So you definitely could be. I think there is something to be said about bigger than average fish wanting to be comfortable, and that's water temperature, that's dissolved oxygen in the water, that's food nearby, it's cover. I mean, even you look at a 10+ inch bluegill, that still is within the realm of feeding by a muskie. Mm-hmm. So they got to be somewhere where they can duck and cover if they really need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're probably onto something there.
I kind of think of it as a good starting point if I'm out on a monster hunt.
Right.
I'm going to start, looking in 15, 17 feet of water, trying to find soft bottom where there would be a lot of bugs. But something that's also close to where they could zip into the weeds, like sharp drops, but
right.
Depth off of there. And also, I think a lot of times too, those big bluegills, they're not afraid to just hang out in open water too.
Yeah.
And that kind of sort of makes a little bit of sense. If you're hiding in the brush, somebody can sneak up behind you. It's pretty hard to sneak up on a guy standing in the middle of a field.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, yeah. And again, fish will do whatever they want to do. And so some days you find them like that. Because recently I pulled an 11-inch gill out of 42 feet of water, 10 feet down. And I can try that again. I don't know that it'll be a guarantee that I'll get the 10 plus out there. They could be pushed up into 3 feet. I guess it all depends on where the food's at.
Right.
So interesting. I don't know. I have a lot of time to think about that, and that whole like kind of lone wolfers. Like, I don't go and hang out at the kids' playground to play kickball.
Yep.
And kind of do my own thing. That's kind of how I think about all these big fish, even huge super magnum muskies.
Yeah.
I'm sure with some of your posts and whatnot, you've maybe have had messages or you've run into people. I've heard the stories that this lake is one of them that could potentially pump out a new state record. I don't know. Does it have I think the lake has the size, and I don't know. Does it have the feed?
I would have to think so. The biggest fish that we've handled in the study so far, we actually caught it twice, and it was out of Lake Bemidji. We caught it once in early May. She was full of eggs. She had to be 40+ pounds at that point in time. She was just a hair under 55 inches.
Wow.
So that was a big fish. But beyond that big one, we had caught her again in August, and she was substantially lighter, but still right around 55 inches. But the thing that surprises me about those Bemidji fish, there were mature males that were 47, 48+ inches, and you just don't hear about that in any other lakes. Usually the males will top off at low to mid 40s on lakes where they get really big, and the females will be the ones that get up 4 foot or bigger. There were males that were running milt in the spring that were 46 to 48 inches.
Wow.
So that was really impressive, and they carry their girth really well too. I mean, you go to hold their tail while we're doing the stomach flushing, and you can't even wrap your hand around the tail fin.
Thick
there.
Boys.
Yeah, just all the way from their heads to their tails.
So they're doing good.
Oh yeah. Yep, they're healthy.
Cool. So let's slide back in. So you had this dumb luck. You write this proposal at this conference on a notebook.
Yep.
Were you engaged? Were you talking with somebody from Minnesota on it, or
I wasn't really?
You just got inspired in the moment.
Yep. Just kind of heat of the moment. The gears were turning, and I just jotted down some notes, real rough outline, but I have it written down, and then so that would have been my junior year of undergrad.
Okay.
Get into like the fall of my senior year, I know that I'm going to need to go to grad school at some point, just because in order to get a fisheries biologist job just about anywhere at this point, you really need a master's degree.
Yeah.
So I start reaching out to some different people. I'm really initially reaching out to people that have done work on muskies in the past. So I think I had sent an email to Jim Diana from Michigan. I sent an email to John Farrell from New York. I sent an email to Dave Wall down in Illinois. And none of those guys really had anything going on. A couple of them were within a year or two of retiring, so they weren't really taking on new students at that point.
Yeah.
So I kind of broadened my search at that point, just sending cold emails to a bunch of different professors like, hey, here's what I've done in school. Here's kind of what I'm interested in. Do you have any graduate positions open? And there really wasn't anything that caught my eye while I was going through that process. So I finished out my senior year, got a seasonal internship with Iowa DNR as a creel clerk, and then still looking at grad schools. But then I'm like, well, this job isn't going to be forever, so I need to find something else. And that's how I ended up in Nevada. That was just the first full-time job offer that I got out of college. And so I'm like, well, it's either this or I go stock shelves at Walmart, which, I mean, that's a great job and people have to do it, but I wanted to be in the fisheries field, so
Right.
I knew I needed that experience. So I got out there. I backtrack a little bit. My younger brother actually got his degree here at Bemidji State in the business department, so
Okay.
I kind of knew the school, and then my family had come up to visit during my senior year. And I had gone in to talk to Andy Hafes, who ended up being my advisor at the school, and just kind of said the same thing to him. You know, I'm interested in fish. This is kind of my resume. Here's what I've done. Do you have anything open? I brought up the muskie stuff as something that I'd be really interested in, and he kind of just said, I really don't have anything right now. Keep in touch though, and we'll see if something comes open. So I moved to Nevada. I'm working out there, realizing that the day-to-day repetitiveness of the hatchery work was just getting really old really fast. So I started reaching back out to people, looking at different jobs, looking at grad school again, just trying to something different, just time for a
trying
change.
to formulate a little something.
Yep. So I actually have a friend that family friend that we made at one of those, or at the resort in Park Rapids, that I got to know over the years. And he had a buddy that he went to college with that worked for Minnesota DNR. So he said, here's his email, here's his contact, send him an email, see if he's got anything. So I did that. I said, I'd be open for a job, but I realize I need to go to grad school at some point. Do you know, is there anybody in or around Minnesota that's working with the DNR on any kind of research projects that I can get in touch with? And he gave me two names. One of them was Andy Hafes at the university here in town. And so I sent him an email, and it must have registered that I had talked to him before, because he did remember me bringing this up. And he said, well, I've got this project looking at muskie diets that I just got funding for from the DNR, and we're just getting ready to post the advertisement for people to apply for it. So he had me send in like a writing sample, send in my transcripts and everything. And he interviewed me over Skype from way out in Nevada, and they ended up offering me the position without even ever posting it for anybody else to apply. So
Awesome.
It was right place, right time, right person.
That's cool.
Everything just kind of fell into place.
See, kids, if you you stay on that grind, man,
Yep.
it'll get sharp.
Oh, yeah.
It'll definitely get sharp, and it'll start working your way. That's awesome.
Yeah, that couldn't have worked out any better.
That's super cool, dude. That's super cool. Hey, I mean, I came to Bemidji in 2008. I came here to finish out a graphic design degree and ended up doing prototype engineering.
Okay.
And then also getting the model making degree. I'm not technically an engineer. It's kind of a liaison between industrial designers and mechanical engineers. I can speak both languages. I can build models. I can make models work, that type of stuff. And then, I ended up going down to the cities. Life changed. I came right back here. There's just something about this town,
Yeah.
in this area. When I was in college up there, I spent most of my time in Bridgman Hall, well, all of my time in Bridgman Hall, and it's definitely a college for the hunting and fishing individual.
Oh yeah.
I mean, campus is right on the edge of the lake. You know, you're sitting in there in the fall, and you see, you know, the guys going by in their boats, and you know they're just chucking huge rubber looking for giant muskies. It's quite the scene here on the college campus. It's hard to stay focused.
Yes, that is 100% sure, for sure.
Yeah, did you have a little struggle bus there with staying on top of things?
I kind of got it reined in quick enough that it wasn't too big of a deal. So the way the timing all worked out, we actually moved up here just before Christmas.
Okay.
In 2018, I guess it would have been, and then my wife and I went back to Iowa for Christmas with our families, and then came back up here, and I started school that January of 2019.
Okay.
So I got my feet into a little bit of ice fishing. That was kind of the first time I had ever done much of that winter, and then I got into summer, and we're doing the work for my research project, and then every weekend I was going to different lakes, hauling the boat all over the place, fishing for whatever I could get to bite, and I pushed my luck a little bit that first summer. I'll say it that way. So
oh yeah, it's easy to do, man.
Yeah, but I think I got it out of my system that first summer and kind of settled into a groove where it's you pick your days and pick your times and pick your lakes a little bit too. So that was the biggest struggle for me, as I was trying to go to a different lake every weekend, and I never learned any lake because I never spent enough time on it.
There's a lot of them around here.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, and then you start heading east a few miles, and it's just like, you could be gone for 20 years out there.
Oh yeah,
trying to fish every one of them.
Yeah, we're working on Cass Lake this summer. And that was the first time I had been on any lake in that chain, except for, I guess, Big Lake, if you want to consider that part of the chain. Mm-hmm. But other than Big Lake, I had never been on any of those lakes east of town prior to this year, just because there's so many lakes right in town, and then just north of town a little bit that I spend a lot of time on. So I've never made it over there.
Oh, yeah. Cass Lake is that's quite the formidable monster.
It is.
I know you reached out to me about burbot.
Yep.
Was it last winter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Did you make it out there? I can't remember if I asked you that or not.
Yeah, I did. The guy that you put me in contact with,
Tim?
Yep. He ended up letting me come out with him a couple times, and we didn't catch anything when I was out with him, but then he had my contact info, and when they did get a few fish, I was able to run over there and grab the samples that we needed off of those fish. So,
very cool.
Yep, worked out great.
Very cool. They have increased in popularity in the angling world the last, 10 years or so.
Yep.
When I first started doing it around here, there was just a small group of us I was introduced to it. I remember I was playing darts one night, and I ran into this guy, Jason Rylander. I'm sure you've heard the name.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Who hasn't heard the name? I was playing darts against him, and he starts pulling out this picture, on his phone. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, it's a burbot eel pout. I'm like, I've never seen one that color. Where did you get that? He's like, Lake Bemidji. I said, you got to take me. By the way, my name is Patrick, and we've been close friends ever since.
Right.
And then a couple weeks later, he took me out, and it was me and him and Matt Brewer and in one of Matt's houses, and I hooked up, and I was kind of hooked on it. And there was just a small group of us that were doing it, and it just kind of took off from there. And I guess we're lucky around here to get burbot with such magnificent paint jobs.
Oh yeah.
Here, and you start getting up into Canada and that clear water and stuff, but most people, their relation to burbot is out of either Mille Lacs or Lake of the Woods, where they're just like Lake of the Woods ones are. I mean, they're burbot. They're still cool, but they're brown and gray.
Right. Yeah.
Here, I've never seen that dark olive and gold and yellow. And Tim showed me a picture of one that was literally black and orange.
Nice.
And I don't, to this day, and he doesn't know either. He doesn't know if that burbot's 100% of its diet was crayfish that kind of turned it that color, or if it was just one of those, like you've heard of blue walleyes and blue perch, and I've seen pictures of orange crappies, orange largemouth. Could have been one of those type of genetic deformities, I
Right.
guess, or whatever. But I was like, I mean, it wasn't like monstrously huge. It was 5 or 6 pounds, but it was still like the coolest burbot I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
But, it sucks that you didn't get one. It's burbot fishing, like I was telling you, is you live and die by how much snow is out there. Because
Right.
I don't even know, and I'm being honest here, I don't even know if there's a good burbot spot within walking distance on Bemidji or Cass or Pike Bay. And I'm talking, everyday average walking, not
Right,
this
yeah.
like, yeah, I've climbed Mount Everest 8 times, so I can walk this. Yeah, you can. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the dude that's gonna peel himself off the couch and go walk out there.
Right.
It's a tough go.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So.
And ice fishing at night, period, is brutal.
Oh yeah.
That sun goes down, that's a different animal.
It gets cold.
That 20 below feels even colder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Are you going to go after him again this winter?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I fished for him quite a bit.
Okay.
Outside of that, I had never been on Cass. Why I had reached out to you. I was kind of curious how the lake was, and really just travel on the lake was the biggest thing, because I didn't know if I tried to Baja across in my truck, if I was going to hit a pressure ridge or a spring or anything. So.
Yeah, Cass, usually between Star Island and Stony Point, somewhere in that area is where you're going to get the pressure ridge.
Right.
Other than that, yeah, the only thing that sucks is you got a long drive out there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of spooky without a road.
Right.
If there's a road out there, you try to find that spot. You can get off to the side. Don't ever be that guy to park or
Right.
drill in the road. I've seen that before. That's not a good play, man. Doesn't look good on you.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into your muskie research then. I mean, so you got to go ahead and tell me about your first time out. Like, what was the master plan, and how do you go about hashtag fish puke?
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. So I guess the first time out, we were down on Bald Eagle Lake in the East Metro, kind of the White Bear Lake, Forest Lake area.
I used to live down there. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Mhm.
So that was our first lake that we hit. Just happened that the first year we had a couple lakes farther south, and so they opened up and the ice peeled off a little earlier than some of the lakes up here. So we were down there, and the plan was to get the majority of our fish electrofishing. So we've got these boats with the big spotlights on the front of the boat, and then they're shooting electrical currents into the water, and it just stuns the fish enough that you're able to scoop them up and put them in a live well, and then they recover in cold water. Maybe it takes a little bit longer just to get the blood flowing again, but in warm water, depending on how long they were in the current, it might not take very long. They're thrashing around in the live well again.
You ever caught any skinny dippers?
No skinny dippers, thankfully. I don't know how I'd react to that.
That could get interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Got a naked person here. So Bald Eagle Lake, what'd you find out?
Yeah, so we're pumping the stomachs. So we just have kind of a bilge pump hooked up to like a regular garden hose nozzle where you squeeze the back end of it to control the flow.
No crazy like a super expensive scientific stuff. This is you can get this shit at the hardware store.
Oh yeah, I bought everything at L&M.
Oh, perfect.
So,
well, let's disclaimer, guys. Like, let's not be going and finding all these parts and trying to do this stuff
Right.
yourself.
No, so the expensive equipment is the stuff to get the fish, so the electrofishing. Yeah. And then we actually have gloves that kind of operate similarly to the electrofishing, where they have kind of metal woven into the glove where you hold the fish, and they have leads going to the gloves operated off of batteries, and they just kind of send a low voltage current through the fish. And it just kind of it immobilizes their muscles while you're holding on to them, so you're able to work with them and handle them without them thrashing around and causing issues for you or themselves. So
interesting. I did not know that.
Yep.
How many times have you forgot about that? You were hot gloved and you reached up, touched your face like that, or is it not enough to like?
So there's one lead goes to each glove, so you've got to actually touch with both hands to complete the circuit.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
okay. Yep.
So I've never gotten zapped. One of my interns one time said that she could feel it a little bit through the fish while we're working with the fish.
Okay.
But not enough to really bother anything, is what she
gotcha.
said. So
Interesting. Oh, wish fish could talk. I'd like to grab one of those muskies and just capture what he has to say about that night.
right, yeah,
I'm just out looking for a snack. Next thing I know, I'm getting electrocuted.
right, twice.
Twice. So I would assume that the diets down there, the muskies down there, is I don't know, it's fairly different than what you've come across up here.
Surprisingly not.
Really?
So what I'll say is that pike and walleye have the most similar diets,
Okay.
and their diets, well, they and bass diets tended to vary the most depending on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Muskies kind of eat whatever they really feel like in just about any lake, and it can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that and some of these and some of those, and so it's pretty much similar across lakes. So I will say they didn't eat quite as many perch down there in Bald Eagle, and a few more sunfish and crappies.
I wonder if it's just easier to catch and more prevalent.
I think more prevalent is probably the big one.
I've often thought that too, because, Lake Bemidji has tulipies in it.
Yep.
But those are an open water in the summertime, ultra deep, but they're pelagic or whatever. They're out there in the middle of the lake.
Yep.
And I honestly think that there are muskies that's where they technically live, and they just follow that school. You won't find them other than spawn time. Once they're done with that, they head back out and find that school and live but above or below or behind that school.
Right.
So I think there's different pods of fish sprinkled throughout the lake depending on what we talked about before. Hey, this is where I get my food to sustain my size.
Right.
And if it just so happens to be rock bass, then that's what I eat.
Yep.
Is that kind of been a common thing too? Like where you catch these fish and in relation to what's in their guts? Or do you think that some of them are, I suppose it'd be hard to tell if they leave and go travel and hunt and come back. I suppose that would be hard to.
I will say this year especially, we've started seeing more and more Cisco's in the diets.
Okay.
For both muskies and some of the walleye and pike on the two lakes that we're looking at. But we're still catching our fish in less than 8 feet of water on the lakes. So they're moving substantially, I would think, between the time when they feed and the time that we catch them, if they're hanging up in weed beds in 4 to 8 feet of water when we catch them with Cisco's in their bellies.
Interesting.
So
big Cisco's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's been another thing that's been on my mind too, is again, kind of relating to human behavior, snack and graze all day and then you eat this one giant meal and call it a day.
Yeah. I
think fish do that too. I think they kind of, nibble and snack throughout the day, and then when they're ready, they eat that one, I caught a bluegill once that had a 4-inch perch in it.
Yeah. I believe that.
And that bluegill was, 9 inches or so.
Right.
I think it was just like, you know what? I'm kind of tired of snacking. I need the meal.
Yep.
I'm surprised he bit again. 'Cause I think sometimes, and I joke around, like, I think it was last Thanksgiving, I kind of overdid it a little bit. And I said, well, I think I'm going to go pythoning. And my mom was like, pythoning? I said, yeah, you ever seen a python after it eats a goat? It just kind of lays there for days and lets the sun kind of like break it down. I said, I got to find some sun. I'm just going to lay down and digest this thing for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of think that way sometimes with these muskies when they eat something giant like that. Like they got to slide off someplace and just kind of mellow out and digest that thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we've pulled some gigantic prey out of some of those musky bellies, so it's, depending on the time of the year, it can probably take a few days for something like that to get broken down substantially.
Have you run across any cannibalism in the muskie world?
We have, not a ton, but the 4 or 5 different times we've seen it. I will say it's been more than times we've seen walleye in muskie diets. So
okay. Yeah, that whole period of time was interesting. I think it was just a lot of people, I mean, there's always the debate about invasive species.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Scott Mockentune on here before, and we were talking about, rough fish and invasive species. And I asked him a question, and he was going to look into it. He's also, he's fisheries managers down in Hutchinson, and fisheries biologist. And I asked him, I was like, are largemouth bass native to northern Minnesota? And he's like, I don't really know, but I do know that the smallmouth bass in the boundary waters are what you would consider invasive. They're not natural there.
Right.
I was like, oh, interesting. He's like, yeah, I found paperwork and research where they were introduced up there.
Right.
Like, oh, so the beloved smallmouth bass is actually an invasive species.
Right.
And but that whole, it's almost like a, how would you say it? The legendary stories of, they're just going to run, they're all going to line up on one end of the lake, all the muskies that have been stocked, and they're going to be like, we're eating everything in sight.
Right.
And just roll.
Yep.
It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
It actually probably help your lake out, depending on what the predator-prey relationship is in there.
Yep, that's the big thing. You got to make sure that there's enough food for all the mouths before you start dumping more mouths into the lake.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things we've seen is while they don't eat other muskies a lot, they'll eat northern pike pretty readily. And so, especially in this north central zone in Minnesota, that could be something that managers are interested in going forward. If you've got a predator that may be able to keep some of those hammer handle pike populations in check a little bit, that might be a potential management tool going forward in some of these lakes.
True. And I know there's the pike initiative of, some lakes, and some counties. I mean, you can keep up to 10 of them.
Yep.
I've talked with other guys about northern pike, and like I said earlier, it's like, wow, somebody was targeting northern pike. You just don't hear that.
Right.
I know in my experience, they're a really good fish to eat.
Oh, yeah.
Just a royal pain in the ass to clean.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the problem, is there's 42 ways to clean them this magic way, and all of them need practice. And people don't want to waste fish, which is good.
Yep.
But it's not an easy thing to do, and I think that's what a lot of people have just over the years are like, yeah, I don't know how, I don't want to clean it because it's just it's difficult. It's not like a walleye or anything like that.
Right. I will say, so there are lots of different YouTube videos out there of people, showing you how to clean a pike to get 5 different pieces of bone-free meat, and it's great. We've looked at them and we've tried them. I will say the easiest way I've ever found to do it, though, as long as you're not dealing with young kids that are going to just tear into the food and not have a care in the world, if you just clean it out like a walleye or like a bluegill, just fillet it out and then cut it up into 3-inch chunks or so. Cut each fillet up. You find the chunks that are going to have the Y bones in them, and you bust it about 2/3 of the way down after you cook it when it's all flaky. If you break it in the right spot, you've got just a line of Y bones sticking out of the fillet.
Oh, you can just pick
them right out.
Interesting.
And then straight into your mouth. So
I'm going to try that because, again, like the largemouth bass, a pike through the ice is very good eating.
Right.
I just, like I said, I've never fooled with them because I'm like, I've tried all these different methods, and I hate pickled fish. I just don't like it.
See, we love doing pickled pike in the winter. It's a pain in the butt to do it because it's a process.
Yeah.
But once we get the jars, and I mean, we've even got both my wife and I's families both love them too. So we'll do a big batch of them, and we'll take jars down for Christmas time or something and distribute to the masses.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never had a taste for it. I don't like cucumbers, but I like a good pickle every once in a while. But yeah, I'm going to definitely give that a try. I've also thought, just try to get the bones out as best I can and just make northern pike burgers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And do it up that way. So, holy cow, that's my parents at this time of the night. I'm just gonna go like that. My mom will probably call back and keep calling back.
Okay.
But no, that's fine. What's the strangest thing you found so far to come out of the guts of some of these muskie or pike? Are you sampling pike too?
Yep.
And bass and walleye, right?
Yep. So the basis of the project was we kind of, based on previous research, we had kind of a general idea of what we thought the muskies were going to be eating. And we knew it probably wasn't going to be a lot of walleyes. But what we didn't know is, okay, are these muskies eating the same thing as the walleyes or as the pike? And is that introducing an added layer of competition into these lakes where muskies are stocked? So we wanted to look at all 4 of those species, those primary game fish species in Minnesota. And then we also were looking at lakes with and without muskies to see if the diets of those other 3 species were substantially different in lakes without muskies as opposed to lakes with muskies, if they were kind of being relegated to kind of secondary prey in lakes with muskies or something like that.
Okay.
So to answer your question, the strangest thing we have seen in a diet was actually the lens of one of my interns' headlamps out of a largemouth bass stomach.
Really?
Yeah. So we were out on a lake last year, got to the end of the night and took her headlamp off and was like, well, the lens off the top of my headlamp, the little glass piece that covers the bulb, is gone. Just gone. No idea where it went. Okay, whatever. End of the night sucks. Come back out the next night, get through our first run of fish, and we're puking some bass. And the little clear, shiny disc lands in the tray. And it was the exact lens. So I don't know if the bass was under the boat when we were doing stuff the night before and saw it kind of fluttering down like a big flutter spoon.
Yeah.
Or if it was laying in the mud during the day and the sunlight caught it and it just looked shiny and he slurped it up, or who knows what it was. But yeah, that's the strangest thing. I know that's probably not what you thought I was going to say.
That's pretty cool, man. That's interesting. And I'm just going to say, I mean, bass are dumb. They're not hard to catch.
They will eat anything and everything.
I say that, and I'm going to have a bunch of people like, oh, yeah, well, then, get out there on the tournament trail. No. Come on, man. I mean, just watch those weigh-ins sometimes.
Yeah.
You got one guy that caught a huge bag on frogs in like a foot of water, and the other guy that's in, second place with another huge bag on him on deep diving crankbaits and 30 feet of water on a hump.
Right.
I mean, they're anywhere.
Yep.
Well, that's kind of neat. Did you give the lens?
Oh, yeah. Yep. She got it back and strapped it back into her headlamp and was good to go.
How lucky.
Yeah.
How lucky. I always thought I was hot shit if I caught a fish and got a bonus lure that was in there, or, hey, there's my jig back. I've had that happen like 2 or 3 times in my life.
Yeah.
But to get a lens from a headlamp back, that's an achievement.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool. How about muskies? I mean, I think on your Instagram, you guys, did you guys get a duck out of one?
A few of them, yeah.
Interesting.
A few ducks, a couple muskrats.
Really?
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
That had to have been a violent... Man, I could have seen that firsthand.
Yeah, it would be something. I will say, though, like, we see a fair number of muskrats when we're out at night. And they don't look a whole lot different than, like, a creeper-style muskie bait. I mean, they're just swimming slow through the water, kind of back and forth, zigzagging a little bit. And they're not really as big as a lot of people would maybe think they are. So they're right in that size range of what a muskie would eat. So
my dad was a trapper, and when I was a kid, I used to go with him in his canoe, and we'd set the trap line, and we would get rats. This was back in the day when you could get $6-8 a piece for a rat.
Okay.
For a muskrat. And my job was, after my dad skun them, is I put them on the stretchers and fleshed them out. And yeah, they're big enough just to kind of like let you know that they're something,
right?
But they're not. Yeah, I mean, easy food for a 45-inch muskie.
Oh yeah, yep.
Even the little ones,
right?
Even better.
Yep.
And that's funny because my wife at the time, she moved up here from Kentucky. That's where I met her. I was living in Kentucky at the time, and she moved up here, and I was taking her into tackle shops and stuff, and she'd see these muskies and be like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, they're right out here. And she'd never seen anything like that. And she was always laughing at the lures, how big, and like there was one that was like a rubber duck and had little blades underneath, with the
Right.
treble hooks, and
Yep.
she's like, "Oh my god, that's ridiculous. It's got to be a joke." I was like, "No, it's not a joke." The muskies have been known to eat muskrats, squirrels, bite people. I always laugh at that, the whole biting of people. Maybe it has happened, but I don't think they're intentionally targeting people. They're not great
No.
whites.
No, they're not. Yeah, I don't doubt that it's happened. I've seen a few pictures. Every once in a while, you'll get a report and you look at the picture and it's like, yeah, that looks about like a musky mouth. But then you read through the article a little bit and it's like, oh, this person had a silver anklet on or something like that, and it's something shiny that was caught in the sun, and they thought, oh, food, chomp, and oh, never mind.
Or how about the fact that you could have startled it,
Right.
and it was just a reaction thing?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, wait, bite you. I mean, it's not like they got hands to reach out and slap you or put you away.
Right.
I have a cat. It's in my bedroom because otherwise it'd be out here crawling on you and meow meow. But I'll come walking by. She hides between the end of the couch and the recliner, and she jumps out and she grabs the back of my calf. And it's like, hey man, you're 4 pounds.
Right.
I'm 250. Yeah, I'd destroy you.
Yeah.
But part of that is she was sleeping,
Right.
and I startled her.
Yep.
It was just a reaction thing.
Yeah.
How about them walleyes now? Found anything unusual there, or I suppose basically just perch?
Yeah, mostly perch.
Shiners.
In lakes where there's good perch, if there's not good perch numbers, they'll shift over to bluegills typically.
Okay.
The kind of weirdest thing, I guess, we had an upper 20-inch walleye last year, like 26 to 28, somewhere in that range. Had like a 10 plus inch bullhead in its belly.
Wow.
So that was a pretty substantial meal for a walleye.
I used to target bullheads, and I still do once in a great while. It's just a thing that I did in my childhood, and
Yeah.
it was fun, and it's still fun to do.
Yep.
But that's got to be a tough swallow.
Yeah, I mean, if you get them going head first, the spines will kind of fold back, and they're probably fine. I will say
How'd
they
you
can.
get that bullhead out then?
It was pretty well digested.
Oh, gotcha.
The spines had kind of
Melted.
fallen off at that point, so yeah, the spines will hang out in the bellies for a while, but once the connective tissue goes out, then they kind of just fall off of the bone and they just kind of float around in there.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. I suppose some of the bass, have you retrieved some soft plastic baits out of some?
Yeah, a few soft plastic baits. Yeah, for the most part, a lot of lakes, they're eating a lot of crayfish, which is not entirely unsurprising, but you tend to think of smallies eating the crayfish a little bit more, but a lot of crayfish. And kind of one interesting thing we found, so part of this research project, to back up a little bit, there was another study done on Elk Lake just a little bit before I started, and they were using tissue samples to try to analyze fish diets. You kind of use chemistry of the tissues to figure out what fish are eating.
Yeah, probably looking for like protein components and stuff like
Right,
that.
yep.
Yeah.
So they saw that muskies and the big pike and the big walleye were relying really heavily on the ciscos in that lake. So part of the study design for my study was to look at lakes with and without ciscos to see how diets might shift when ciscos are available as prey. So in the bass, what we've been seeing is that they will eat a ton of crayfish in lakes with ciscos, but in lakes without ciscos, they eat a lot more sunfish. And then they eat a lot of other aquatic invertebrates, just kind of bugs and mussels and whatever else is floating around in both lakes, regardless of cisco. So
Interesting.
that has been interesting. And it's a lot of the patterns we've seen, it looks like it's going back to just kind of the lake type. So
Okay.
like in some of your typical bass panfish lakes that also have pike and walleye, the pike and the walleye are going to be eating more sunfish and crappies, whereas in some of your walleye perch lakes that you tend to think about in like up in the Bemidji area, then a lot of those predators are eating a lot more perch.
Yeah.
And it just so happens to coincide that a lot of those perch walleye lakes also have ciscos, where a lot of the bass bass panfish lakes don't have ciscos.
Yeah, they're usually shallower, warmer water.
Yep.
They don't have the depth. Kind of like going back to burbot.
Yeah.
There are a couple lakes around here that are considered shallow for burbot that
Right.
have them in there, but most of the time you're looking at for lakes that are 70, 80, 90,
Yep.
100.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what they do in the heat of the summer. Garfield Lake, just down there in LaPorte,
Yep.
had burbot in it. It might have a few left in it, but it did have a what they call a summer kill, where
Okay.
the lake just got too hot, too deep, and that's not a very deep lake,
Right.
but it killed them. It killed the majority of them.
Yeah.
Because I think in the summertime, in the heat of the summer, they're in the bottom.
So I don't want to steal his
And then
thunder, but we had another grad student at BSU that was doing the burbot tracking study down
Okay.
on Bad Medicine Lake.
Oh yeah, I've fished it.
Yep. So he had those telemetry transmitters that he implanted into the burbot, and then he was able to kind of see where they were going throughout the year. And he's seen that a fair number of them will actually suspend during the summer,
Okay.
kind of more like ciscos will,
Oh.
where they find the kind of the optimum between warm temperatures up above and cool water below, but also have good oxygen levels,
Right.
and they'll kind of hang out there.
Interesting. And I've always thought too that they would come up at night when it's the coolest and feed. Because my thought was they were always deep, in the coldest water they could find.
Right.
And there's usually not a lot of food
Mm-hmm.
in those extreme depths.
Right.
So they have to sustain life.
Yep.
So I think they'd come up shallow feed and then cruise back
Yeah.
down.
Yep.
But that's interesting. That's very interesting that he noticed that they suspend.
Yep. So there could be some different dynamics going on in that lake. That lake's pretty unique in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways, and
It's got trout in it too.
Yep, it's got trout, so maybe they're up there chasing trout around. It is spring fed, so you have to assume that there's pretty good oxygen all the way down to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no reason that they couldn't be hanging out super deep just throughout the summer.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did see that a pretty good number of them were actually spending time up in the water column throughout the year.
I've seen pictures of them caught in open water, and they're not like anything that you catch in the wintertime. Those big pot bellies are not existent.
Right. Yeah, they look more like an eel than an eel pout at that point.
Yeah. Well, the hot topic I know around here, especially when it comes to Cass Lake, is the rusty crayfish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just those things are mowing down weed beds, and it's also got zebra mussels.
Yep.
So the water's clearing up. And that kind of brings me to my next question with the zebra mussels in Lake Bemidji now, Cass Lake. I mean, they're pretty much going to be in just about every lake here before too long. I don't think there's any way around it anymore. I've heard from other biologists that it's not a good thing, but it doesn't mean that everything in the lake is going to die. It cleans it up, and you do get a little bit of deterioration of that food chain,
Mm-hmm.
but it will eventually heal itself.
Right.
But have you noticed that with the water clarity and that whole, or maybe you haven't gone that far in your research yet, but with the zebra mussels and the clarity of that food chain breakdown,
Right.
you taken into
Yeah.
consideration any of that?
We looked at it a little bit. There really wasn't anything there between lakes with and without zebra mussels in terms of the adult diets. I think the bigger concern at this point for a lot of people is not so much the adult fish, but it's the really young fish.
Yeah, because
Right.
they require the microorganisms.
Yeah, yep. So that's the stuff that the zebra mussels are filtering out of the water. And if you look through some of the stuff that they've done on zebra mussels, the amount of water that a population of zebra mussels can filter in a day is just insane.
Oh, really?
So, they're basically cycling through the whole volume of a lake in a couple weeks time, it seems like. So they're mowing through that stuff really fast and basically taking all of those nutrients that would be suspended up in the water column for the little larval fish to feed on, and they're depositing it on the bottom as waste. So that's the big concern at this point, is how those small fish are gonna adapt to the changes in the food chain early in life. And then if they can get kind of through that bottleneck where food might be limited to where they're feeding on other fish, then they might be okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's life underwater is checks and balances.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that's where I wanted to ask you, with this new rough fish initiative that's going through about, hey, the goal is to rid the terminology of rough fish. I appreciate all fish. I'm just one of them weird guys that I like to catch red horse on a rod and reel.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're super fun. I like to catch a sheep's head. I've fished for bullheads. One of my goals is dogfish or bowfin on a fly rod.
Ooh.
And those are a formidable critter.
Absolutely.
When I'm hunting big panfish, I look for low numbers of panfish, high numbers of pike or bullheads or dogfish. Then I'm going to be fishing it. I'm going to be looking for bluegills.
Right.
But those to get rid of the term rough fish, and I think it's kind of cool because of those checks and balances. I never was a big fan of the eel pow festival. Way back in the day, it was a slaughter fest.
Right.
And it just, there's no limit. I get it. And it brought a lot of money into the community, but I was always like, you know what? If they rid that lake of burbot, what's going to happen to Leech Lake?
Right.
Because regardless of them being a rough fish, they're a formidable predator, and they keep a lot of stuff in check.
Absolutely.
Like your crayfish, young of the year perch, a lot of that stuff.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for angling opportunities and the recognition of, hey, there's no such thing as trash fish here.
Right.
Are you feeling good about it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's been a lot of work going on regarding that topic, and it's a lot of the terminology kind of goes back to kind of the early days of fisheries management in the area, and you had your kind of desirable species, and then you had the stuff that people weren't necessarily taking the time to fish for. And the unfortunate thing is that the terminology for kind of the non-game fish species and the invasive fish species kind of seems to have melded together a little bit. Yep. So people think of like buffalo fish as the same as carp. Well, buffalo are native to these waters in a lot of these places. They feed differently. They have pretty different ecology. But if you just see a buffalo and a carp kind of sitting next to each other, they kind of look similar. So you can see where that discrepancy comes in. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but I'm looking forward to seeing some of those changes.
Yeah. It's not far off from, duck hunting. There's a limit to the average person, there's a flock of ducks. Well, what kind of ducks are they? They're just ducks.
Yeah.
Are they mallards? Are they wood ducks? Are they blue-winged teal? Are they buffleheads? Are they bluebills? Are they, that same thing can be applied to the fish species as well.
Yep.
That's funny because up on my wall up there, I'll show you after we're done, but I got that from Scott. That's a copy of the 1936 Minnesota fishing regulations.
Okay, nice.
And there's sand pike on there.
Okay.
Which I believe is what they called walleye, but it also says walleye on there. So I'm thinking it might be sauger.
Yeah. That
or they call walleyed pike.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of neat. But the interesting part is that the limit back then in 1936 was 6. And in my circles, in my talks and walks of life, there's a lot of anglers that would love to see that drop to 4.
Yeah.
And be able to use 2 lines. There's always the catch.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. Me personally, I only keep fish that I'm going to eat for that meal. I'm not a stockpiler in the freezer. I also hate filleting fish.
Yeah.
I fish hard, man. I fish all day, and the last thing I want to do is at 11 o'clock at night be standing there on my cutting board.
Right.
Going, oh, what? And I've done it before. Why did I do this to myself?
Yep.
Why did I do so much work? I always joke around. I said, if I really have a craving for fish, I can go to Target and open the glass door, and it's breaded, it's filleted, it's boneless, it's ready to go, and it tastes like fish.
Yep.
I have a terrible palate, apparently. To me, it's just all fish. I end up just tasting the breading, but so what are your plans for the fall then? Here, are you going to continue on with hashtag fish puke?
Yep. This is our last field season on the fish puke study. So we've got 2 lakes that we're working on. North Star Lake over by Marcel is one of them, and then Cass Lake is the other one. So we actually started this week on Tuesday night back out electrofishing on Cass.
Okay.
So we were out there Tuesday, Wednesday night, got rained out Thursday night, and then they're doing the Cass Lake Standard Survey. The first net pull was today. So they were processing those fish up at the DNR shop, and we were cutting stomachs out of some pike and walleye that they had brought in from those gill nets to look at those as well.
Interesting. So, well, there's a walleye tournament going on out there right now.
Yeah, I saw a few of the boys were over there pre-fishing this week when we were over there. So
yeah, I got a couple of good buddies that are fishing it right now, and I got a Snapchat from them earlier. They're in the top 10.
Okay.
They got a 16 and a quarter pound bag. So
nice.
Yeah, and it's video game fishing.
Yeah.
They, with the Panoptics and live scope and all that, it's no, there's nothing in this school of size, and it's definitely different. I'm kind of glad I don't feel the need to spend thousands of dollars to do that.
Yeah.
At the same time, hey, if there's money on the line and you can get that and get the advantage, go for it, dude.
Right.
I mean, anytime there's money on the line. If there was money on the line every time I went fishing, I'd have 80-pound braid on everything and as many treble hooks as I could get.
Right.
But I'm not.
Right.
So it's the old fly rod. It'll be interesting. Keep your eye on the shallows as Cass Lake cools. I don't know how long you're going to be out there doing it. Just be curious to see if you start getting burbot to come up shallow.
I will say we saw a couple this spring early when we were out there up shallow, and that was the first time we had seen them up shallow. But yeah, we definitely saw a few.
I hate bringing up burbot all the time, but they're such a fascinating critter, and if you're out looking to catch burbot, it's your natural instinct is to look at Lake Finder and look at creel senses, but they hardly show up.
Right.
And that's because they don't catch them in the nets because they're either suspended, like you were saying, or out deep.
Right.
And it's just kind of one of those, super deep. There's probably burbot in there.
Yep.
Let's go find them. And once you've drilled and caught some, you can look at any spot on Cass Lake and find your own spot. I mean, it's not hard.
Right.
Some sort of plateau on a sharp drop next to super deep water.
Yep.
There's no magic.
Yeah.
There's no magic. It's what you do is very interesting, and I love following your Instagram. You should drop your Instagram handle real quick.
Yeah, Instagram, Kamden.Glade, I believe, or if you just search Kamden Glade or hashtag fish puke, I'm sure I'll come up.
Hashtag fish puke.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, and then Twitter, my handle's at kglade_fishsci, so FISHSCI.
Okay.
Some of the Twitter stuff tends to be a little bit more science-y based, I guess. There's a pretty good contingent of fisheries biologists on Twitter, so I use that space a little bit more for some kind of professional outreach, more so than kind of angler outreach. But then I try to, most of the posts are pretty similar. It just might be some of the wording that gets changed around a little bit between the two, but most of the pictures and videos end up on both spots.
Perfect. Do you have plans once your study wraps up to come up with something else so you can stick around? Are you going to stick around in the area? Is Bemidji going to be your home for you and your wife?
Unfortunately, it's not. So the position I'm in is a temporary position that they kind of created for me to finish up this project after my master's degree. So I have funding until June of next year to stick around. So hopefully by that point I have something a little bit more permanent lined up. There were a few DNR jobs that just closed. The applications just closed yesterday, so I'm waiting to hear back on those. But
Okay.
yeah, in the meantime, I'll be working at BSU. We're working on that stuff, and then I'm helping out with some yellow perch projects with another grad student and then one of the undergrads. That one actually started on Cass Lake as well. They were seeing some increased growth rates in the yellow perch after the rusty crayfish kind of took off. So we're looking at 14 lakes throughout the state, including Cass Lake, with 7 with rusty crayfish and 7 without, to see if there's differences in the yellow perch populations.
Interesting. That's really cool. And I have been obsessed with the giant perch for a long time. And then even more so after the last couple of years of diving into European fishing on YouTube. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm also a gearhead, so you get to, when you're watching these, like the YouTube Predator Cup and Fly versus Jerk and all this stuff from Sweden and Denmark and whatnot, you get to see like weird, well, not weird, but just baits that you don't get to see over here that Berkeley and Storm and Strike King all make, but it's just their European market.
Yep.
But I've been the European redfin perch that look like our perch.
Yep.
Except they get, 6 pounds.
Yeah.
They catch them on top water. It's like their largemouth bass.
Yeah.
Now, there is largemouth bass in France. They had a YouTube Predator Cup largemouth bass edition.
Okay.
And there's largemouth bass in France, and I think they were on specifically managed lakes for largemouth. It's not largemouth bass are not native to France.
Right.
But and in my fishing circles, I'll send pictures. I've gotten to learn the metric system. So like a 56 centimeter perch.
That's big.
It's huge. It's like 26 inches?
Something like that.
Somewhere around there. Gotten fairly good with it.
22, 23.
22, 20. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's a 6 pound bass.
Yeah, that's big.
And they're just like, man, I wish we had those. I was like, how do their perch get? I said, they're a different genetic makeup. They're different species. They look a lot like ours, but they would be fun to have over here. They really would.
Right.
I could only imagine what kind of havoc those would wreak. Now, there are zander over in North Dakota.
Yeah.
In a little pond or something like that.
Right.
Those are, they look a lot like a walleye.
Yep.
Every once in a while, a big zander picture will make its way onto the social medias, and it was caught on the Rainy River, 37-inch walleye, and then you look and you're like, it's a zander. It's got the really pointy snout on it.
My favorite is when the state tourism agencies will plaster a big zander picture up and say, come walleye fishing at this lake, and I get a kick out of those.
Yeah, I have seen that. Pike, also from Europe, make their way through for Canadian records and this and that. But have you ever taken a gander over across the pond on the old YouTube and checked out any fishing over there?
I haven't.
Tyler Winter, I've had him on the show here. Yep. Rough fish, sucker advocate, super knowledgeable dude. He's actually one of the guys behind this bill, really trying to educate people and stuff. He would just spend some time over in Great Britain.
Okay.
And I was following his Instagram, and majority of the fishing is private. There's not a lot of public land over there, and it's pretty bad. I said, well, get off that island and head over into Denmark. That's where all the good stuff's at. Denmark, Germany, you get over in there. But if you're ever bored on a cold winter night, man, I highly recommend Kamden Glade or Heston Barsh on YouTube.
Okay.
Phenomenal stuff, especially Fly versus Jerk.
Okay.
It's a pike fishing tournament. 2 guys with a fly rod versus 2-man teams with hard gear.
Right.
And their pike baits are very much our musky baits.
Yeah.
But that's very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. Do you have anything? You got the laptop out here. You got anything cool? What else you got?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Kind of nerded out a little bit. I like it.
Yeah.
I like science like that.
Yeah.
I'm a big Star Wars fan, so science it fits right in there.
Yep. There you go.
Hey man, I want to extend an invite too sometime. If you ever want to go out flow tube fishing, there's a few of us around here that have flow tubes that I've like convinced buddies to get, and
Right.
they still have them because they're ultra fun. I don't know if you've ever done it or not.
I have not. So kind of the funny thing, as much as I love being on the water, I really don't like to be in the water very much.
Oh, well, this would just be from your knees down.
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe you've seen some stuff that I haven't seen.
No,
You're making me nervous because now I'm going flow tubing tomorrow and Sunday.
Well, I will say the water temps are dropping, but
Oh, yeah.
they're not cold yet. We were 67, 68 the other night on cast, but no, it's not really any one thing. It's just I love to be on the water. I love to be close to the water. I don't really care to be in the water very much.
Well, if you're ever feeling froggy, you just
Okay.
holler at me and I'll take you out.
Sounds good.
I have flow tubed Halloween weekend 2010.
Okay.
It hurt for about 3 minutes and then couldn't feel a thing. And I
Right.
fished for a couple hours and it was a little rough getting out of the lake.
I was going to say, how'd your legs work at the end of the night?
Not very well.
Yeah.
Not very well. And then I was cold on the inside.
Yeah.
Like I could feel like inside my rib cage it was just cold.
Right.
And it took several days to warm up.
Yeah.
Waders are going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just renewed the gym membership, so we're going to trim down some more. So I'm not going to buy waders yet, just to have to buy them again.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But good luck with everything out there and the information that your work only benefits us as anglers.
Yep.
At the end of the day, you know, and you've 7 papers? Are those published? Can guys look them up, or are those just
Right. So they're available for people to look at. Nothing has been published yet.
Okay.
We've got one in review right now. So it's been submitted a little over a month ago, so we're waiting to hear back on that one. And then we've got a couple more kind of in the hopper that we're trying to finish a few things up with. But yeah, if you're interested in kind of like the nuts and bolts and really want to nerd out sometime, there's a website. It's researchgate.com.
I'm writing that down because I'm nerdy like that.
Right. So yeah, just researchgate.com. And if you look me up on there, I've got my master's thesis is uploaded there that you can download and read. And then
That's the link that's on your Instagram.
Yep. That
reckon.
link is on my Instagram and on my Twitter if that's easier for you. So
Yeah.
if you go there, my thesis is there. And then I've also got a few PowerPoint presentations uploaded there as well. I think a couple of them have videos and a couple other ones just have slides. But if you're bored and interested in listening or reading about some of that stuff, that's where you can find that.
I definitely will. As a matter of fact, I almost clicked on one of them. I was like, no, you can't do this right now. He's going to be here in about 45 minutes. At the same time, I was like, maybe he would be honored. Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm reading one of your papers, man. Because I've dove in over some Minnesota research. I've looked at some muskie stuff and panfish stuff over in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a lot of published, what do you call them? Besides PDFs, what do you call the research papers when they're out there? Not periodicals, those are magazines. I can't think of
Journals?
the word. Journals.
Yep.
Yes. I've read quite a few of those. It's not an easy read.
No.
There's a lot of Latin words that end up skipping over, and it kind of sort of makes sense towards
Right.
the end of it. But,
Yep.
But it's always interesting stuff, and if you're an angler, you can pick up a few things in there.
Oh, yeah.
And you can kind of change the way you think about some things.
Yep.
Very cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on and hanging out and talking fish stuff with me. It's always fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime you want to come up, man.
Sounds good.
I'll let you get back to your research.
Sounds great. Thanks, Patrick.
All right. Later.